The moment Tabena walked out of that courtroom, he didn't look at his wife. He looked at his watch. That's the detail that broke everything open. Not the lawyers, not the settlement papers, not even the fact that she had hired a private investigator to document his assets 6 months before she filed. It was the watch. A quick glance, like he had somewhere better to be. Like the end of a 12-year marriage was a meeting running long. Nadia Ose found out later that he had dinner reservations at Bones that night. Table for 2. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to where it started, because every story about a woman who survives needs you to understand first what she survived. Nadia was 31 years old when her life fell apart, and 32 when she rebuilt it into something nobody saw coming. Not even her. She had been born in Kumasi, Ghana, the second daughter of a retired school teacher, and a woman who sold fabric at the market every morning from 5 until the sun made it unbearable. Her parents were not poor, not exactly, but they were the kind of family where nothing was wasted, where you ate what was on the plate, where the lights went off at 9 to save the electricity bill, where love showed up in small, practical ways. A father who resoled your shoes himself because new ones cost too much. A mother who braided your hair every Sunday night without being asked because she knew you couldn't afford a salon. Nadia had come to America at 22 on a scholarship to study accounting at Georgia State. She had arrived in Atlanta with 2 suitcases, a carry-on, and $400 in a money belt her mother had sewn shut with extra thread so it wouldn't come undone on the flight. She worked. Lord, she worked. Evenings at a grocery store, weekends filing documents at a small tax firm that later offered her a full-time position after she graduated. By 27, she had her CPA license and a job at a real firm downtown. By 28, she had met Tobena Adeyemi at a mutual friend's dinner party. Tobena was 35, Nigerian-born, Howard-educated, impeccable in every external way. He ran a consulting firm with clients across 6 states. He wore his suits like they had been cut specifically for him, which they had. He could talk about wine the same way he talked about economic policy, with just enough knowledge to make you feel you were learning something, not enough to make you feel stupid. He had called her 2 days after that dinner party. Not texted. Called. "I haven't stopped thinking about what you said about depreciation schedules," he told her. "I thought I was bored by accounting until you made it sound like detective work." She laughed. She hadn't meant to, but she did. They dated for 2 years. He was thoughtful in the way that makes a woman believe she has finally found someone paying attention. He remembered that she hated cilantro. He noticed when she was tired before she said so. He flew her to Lagos to meet his family, and his mother, a small, fierce woman named Chidinma who wore her gray locks piled high and assessed Nadia with the kind of eyes that measured more than they revealed, took Nadia's hand after dinner and said quietly, "You are a serious person, I can tell. My son needs a serious person." Nadia had felt something warm settle in her chest. "Thank you, Mama," she had said. "Don't thank me," Chidinma had replied. "Just stay serious." At the time, Nadia thought it was an odd thing to say. Later, she understood it was a warning. The wedding was in Atlanta. 300 guests. A beautiful hall in Midtown with string lights and live music, and a cake that took 3 people to carry. Nadia wore a dress that had taken her mother 4 months of market savings to contribute to. Her father flew in from Kumasi and cried when he saw her, which made her cry, which made her mother cry, which made everyone in the front row cry. It was a good day. The first 3 years were genuinely fine. Not perfect, but fine in the ways that matter. They built a life. A house in Sandy Springs. Routines. A shared calendar. Long drives on Sundays to nowhere in particular. Tabena worked constantly, but he came home. He was present, mostly. It was around year 4 that things started shifting in ways Nadia couldn't quite name. He traveled more, which was normal, his work demanded it. But he became unreachable in ways that felt new. Texts that went 2 hours without a response when before he had always answered quickly. A weekend in Charlotte for a client summit that she couldn't find any record of on his company calendar when she happened to glance at it. Small things. The kind you tell yourself mean nothing because the alternative is too large to hold. By year 5, Nadia had talked herself out of her own instincts so many times she had almost stopped trusting them entirely. Then one evening in November, Tobena came home from a business trip, kissed her on the cheek, and said he was going to take a shower. His phone stayed on the kitchen counter. It buzzed. She didn't mean to look. She was standing right there. The preview of the message read, "Miss you already. Last night was." The rest was cut off. She set the phone face down and finished making dinner. She served it. They ate. She smiled when he made a joke about airport food. She poured wine. She washed the dishes. And when Tobena fell asleep that night, she sat in the kitchen at 1 in the morning and accepted what she already knew. Had known, probably, for longer than she wanted to admit. She hired a lawyer before she said a word to Tobena. The lawyer told her, "Before you do anything else, we need to understand what you're entitled to. 12 years, joint assets, your career contributions. Nadia, you have a case, but you need to be smart." Nadia had always been smart. That was never the problem. The divorce took 14 months. Tobena was not cruel about it, but he was calculating. His lawyers were very good. He had started restructuring assets 8 months before Nadia filed, which was why she had to fight for what should have simply been hers. She came out the other side with half the house sale, a settlement that was fair on paper, but felt thin after the legal fees, and a 1-bedroom apartment in Decatur that smelled like the previous tenant's candles. She was 31 years old. She had $6,000 in savings after the settlement cleared. She had a job she could barely concentrate at. And she had pride, the kind that keeps you standing when sitting down would be so much easier. What she did not have was anyone to help her move. Her friends from the married years were, it turned out, mostly Tobena's friends or couple friends who didn't know which side to stand on and eventually chose the easier one. Her college friends had scattered to other cities. Her family was in Ghana. There was one person, Ifua Mensah. Nadia and Ifua had met at a Ghanaian community event 7 years ago, back when Nadia was newly married and still attended those things with Tobena. Ifua had been there alone, eating jollof, with the focus of someone who was not going to be distracted by small talk. Nadia had sat next to her and said, "That's either very good jollof or you're having a terrible day." "Both," Ifua had said. They had been friends ever since, in the quiet way of two women who don't require constant contact to stay close. Ifua was 29, a nursing assistant at Emory, working the night shift most weeks. She lived in a small apartment in Clarkston with 2 roommates and sent half her salary home to her mother and younger siblings in Accra every month. She owned very little and gave away a great deal. When Nadia's marriage ended, Ifua did not offer advice. She did not say, "I told you so," though she had, once gently, said something feels off with him, and Nadia had changed the subject. Ifua simply showed up on moving day with a borrowed truck, a cooler full of food she had cooked the night before between shifts, and no questions. "You don't have to talk about it," Ifua said, carrying a box up the stairs of the Decatur apartment. "I know," Nadia said. "But if you want to talk, I'm here. I know." They moved everything in 4 hours. Then they sat on the floor of the empty apartment eating rice and stew from plastic containers because the chairs were still in the corner, wrapped in moving blankets, and Ifua said, "New chapter. I'm terrified," Nadia admitted. "Good," Ifua said. Fear means you're paying attention. If this story speaks to something you've been carrying, if you know what it means to rebuild from a place that felt like nothing, subscribe before we go any further, because this story is not even close to over. Now, here is where Nadia's story takes the turn nobody expected, including Nadia. 3 months after moving into the Decatur apartment, Nadia's firm downsized. She was not let go. Her work was too solid. But her hours were cut, and the promotion she had been working toward was quietly shelved. The timing was, to put it mildly, not ideal. She picked up freelance accounting work wherever she could. Small businesses, nonprofits, a Haitian restaurant in Marietta that paid her in cash and extra food, which she was not too proud to accept. She worked from her kitchen table from 7 in the morning until she couldn't see straight. She slept badly. She lost 8 pounds she hadn't meant to lose. What she did not do was call Tabena. She did not borrow money from friends. She did not go back to Ghana to recover, though her mother called every week with that particular combination of love and pressure that only Ghanaian mothers have perfected. Nadia, eat, come home and rest and come back. You don't have to do this alone. I do, Mama, Nadia said. I just need to know I can. Ifua, meanwhile, came by twice a week, not to check on her. Nadia had made it clear she didn't want to be checked on, but to drop things off. A container of groundnut soup, a loaf of bread from the Ghanaian bakery in Stone Mountain. Once, inexplicably, a second-hand lamp because your apartment is too dark and dark apartments make sad people sadder. Nadia kept a list, in her phone, of everything Ifua brought. She intended to pay it back when she was in a position to. Ifua didn't know about the list. She would have told Nadia to delete it. 6 months in, something shifted. Nadia landed a contract with a mid-sized construction company in Buckhead. Osei Kufor Development, run by a Ghanaian-American family that had been building commercial properties in Atlanta for 20 years. The patriarch, Emmanuel Osei Kufor, had been referred to her by the Haitian restaurant owner, who turned out to know everyone. Emmanuel was 63, methodical, and had been burned by an accountant who had made expensive mistakes with his quarterly filings. He needed someone careful and honest. Nadia was both. The contract was 3 months, then 6. Then Emmanuel offered her a permanent position as financial director. The salary was more than she had made at the firm. She sat in her kitchen that evening and called her mother. Mama, I have something to tell you. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, you sound like yourself again. I'm getting there, Nadia said. That's enough. That's enough for now. What Nadia didn't know, and wouldn't know for another 4 months, was that Emmanuel's nephew had been watching. Kofi Osei Kufor was 38. He had come from London to help his uncle navigate a major expansion project and had been in Atlanta for 5 months, living temporarily in the Buckhead house while he worked. He was not what you would call flashy. He drove a practical SUV. He brought his own lunch most days. His family was worth somewhere north of $60 million between their Atlanta and London properties, but Kofi wore that the way you wear a coat you've had so long you forget you're wearing it. It was just there, not something he led with. He had noticed Nadia in the way quiet people notice things. Without announcing it, he noticed that she came in before anyone else, that she's asked questions that got to the center of a problem without circling it first, that when she disagreed with someone in a meeting, she didn't apologize for it. He noticed, once, that she brought extra food to the office and left it in the break room without saying anything, and when he asked the receptionist about it, the receptionist said, "Oh, she does that. She says everyone works better when they've eaten." He thought about that more than was strictly necessary. He did not pursue her. He was not built for pursuit. He was built for patience. What brought them together, in the end, was a broken elevator and bad weather. It was a Thursday in February. The office elevator was out. Rain was coming down in the particular Atlanta way that makes the city forget how to function. Nadia had missed her bus window by 3 minutes and was standing in the lobby of the building with her laptop bag and no umbrella, doing the calculation of whether she could make it to the parking deck without ruining the bag. Kofi was in the lobby waiting for his driver. "I'm going to Decatur," he said. "Is that near you?" "That is exactly where I live," she said. "Then get in." It was not romantic. It was practical. They sat in the back of the car and talked about the Q3 projections for 40 minutes, and Kofi said, "You caught something in the March numbers that my uncle's last accountant missed for 2 years." "I know," Nadia said. "It cost him $60,000. "It did." "How did you find it?" "I looked. Most people skim." "I look." Kofi nodded. Outside, Atlanta slid by in the rain. "Where are you from originally?" "Kumasi." "You?" "My parents are from Cape Coast. I grew up in London." "That explains the accent." "What about it?" "Nothing bad. Just, you say some things like a Ghanaian, and some things like you went to boarding school." He laughed. "A real one, not the polite kind. Both are true." They talked the whole way to Decatur. When the car stopped in front of her building, she thanked him and got out. He watched her walk in through the lobby doors and thought, that is someone who has been through something and didn't let it make her small. He didn't act on it for 2 more months. He was, as stated, a patient man. When he finally asked her to dinner, he did it simply. "Would you like to have dinner?" Not a work thing, a dinner thing. Nadia looked at him for a long moment. She had gotten very good at looking at people carefully. "Why?" "Because I think you're interesting, and I'd like to know you better." "That's it?" "That's it." She said yes. What followed was slow by design. Nadia was not available to be swept up. She had been swept up before, and she knew how that ended. She was available to be known, carefully, incrementally, by someone willing to take the time. Kofi took the time. He did not take her to expensive restaurants to impress her. He took her to places he actually liked. A small Ghanaian spot in Clarkston that his uncle had recommended, a jazz club in Little 5 Points, a farmer's market on a Saturday morning where he bought too many tomatoes and admitted he was trying to learn to cook and was not going well. He asked about her family. He listened when she talked about her parents in a way that showed he was actually absorbing it, not just waiting to respond. He told her about his own divorce. 6 years ago, a marriage that had lasted 3 years, a woman who had wanted a different version of him than the one that actually existed. She wanted me to be more present, socially, events, parties, the whole production. I'm not that person. She needed someone who was. It wasn't anyone's fault, it just was. Nadia appreciated that he didn't cast himself as the victim or his ex-wife as the villain. That told her something. 4 months in, he met Ifua. It happened accidentally. Ifua stopped by on a Sunday afternoon, as she sometimes did, and Kofi was there. Ifua sat down, accepted the tea Nadia made her, and sized Kofi up in the way that women who love someone fiercely size up the people entering that person's life. "What do you do?" Ifua asked him. "Property development. Commercial, mostly. And why do you like Nadia?" Nadia nearly choked. Ifua. "No, it's fine," Kofi said. He looked at Ifua directly. "Because she's honest and she's careful and she's the kind of person who leaves food in the break room without making a thing of it. Because she has been through hard things and it didn't make her bitter, which is rarer than people admit. And because when she laughs, it seems like she means it." The room was quiet. Ifua looked at her tea, then at Nadia, then back at her tea. "Okay," she said. That was it. "Okay." Later, when Kofi had left, Ifua said quietly, "He sees you, Nadia." Nadia was quiet. "Not your CV, not the version of you that's impressive." "You I know," Nadia said. "Don't talk yourself out of it." What Nadia didn't tell Ifua What she hadn't told anyone was that 3 weeks earlier, Tobena had called. He had heard through the Atlanta Ghanaian Community Network, which functioned like a very effective and not always welcome telegraph system, that Nadia was doing well, that she was working with the O.C. Kafur family, that she had been seen at events looking, by all accounts, like a woman who had found her footing. "I just wanted to check in," Tobena said. "See how you're doing." "I'm doing well," Nadia said. "I heard you're working with Emmanuel O.C. Kufur. That's impressive. Thank you." A pause. "Nadia, I've been thinking about everything. I think we made a mistake." She had expected to feel something when this came, some version of the old pull. Instead, she felt very little, faint and distant, like a song from Picard passing on the street. "I don't think we made a mistake," she said. "I think we both found out important information and acted on it. I miss you, Tobena." She kept her voice even. "I hope you're well. I genuinely do. But I'm not available for this conversation." She hung up. She sat for a while after, not crying, not celebrating, just sitting, understanding that the moment she had feared for 2 years, the moment of him wanting her back, which she had imagined would either destroy her or vindicate her, had turned out to be simply a phone call. A man's voice on a phone. Something she had gotten through and moved past in the space of 3 minutes. She picked up her laptop and went back to work. The night that changed things between Nadia and Kofi happened in October, 14 months after they had first met. They were at his uncle Emmanuel's home for a family dinner, a large, warm gathering with cousins visiting from London and Toronto, plates of food covering the dining table, kids running through the hallways, someone's aunt correcting someone else's recipe from across the room. Nadia sat next to Emmanuel's wife, Adwoa, who was 70 and had the bearing of a woman who had made every significant decision in the family for the last 40 years and was at peace with this. Adwoa watched Nadia across the table for a while and then said quietly, "You survived something." Nadia looked at her. "Yes, and you didn't become small from it." "I tried not to." Adwoa nodded slowly. "My Kofi is a good man. He is slow to trust and slow to love, which means when he does it completely. He chose you carefully." She looked at Nadia. "I hope you chose him the same way." Nadia thought about the question for a long moment, about what it meant to choose someone carefully, to look at a person's actual hands, not just listen to their words, to see the small things, the ones that don't perform, that don't know they're being watched, to see those things and trust them. "I did," she said. Adwoa squeezed her hand once and went back to her food. Kofi proposed 6 months later. No private beach, no string quartet. He did it in her apartment on a Tuesday evening. She was still in work clothes. He had made dinner. The Ghanaian cooking lessons had improved considerably by then, and after they ate, he put a small box on the table. "I had a whole speech," he said. "But I know you don't like speeches, you like directness. So, directly, I want to be your person, the serious kind, for good." She looked at the box, then at him. "Your grandmother said you were slow to love. She was right, but I'm not slow anymore." Nadia opened the box. The ring inside was simple, gold, not enormous. The kind of thing you could wear every day without it catching on anything. The kind chosen by someone who was thinking about your actual life, not the impression of it. She put it on. "Yes," she said. "Obviously yes." They married the following spring, in a ceremony in Accra, Ghana. Nadia's parents were in the front row. Her father wore his best suit. Her mother did not cry, which surprised everyone, until the moment Nadia appeared at the entrance, and then her mother simply put her hand over her mouth and looked away, and everyone understood. Kofi's family came from London and Cape Coast. Emmanuel and Adwoa sat in the second row, and Adwoa wore yellow and looked pleased in the way of someone whose assessment has been confirmed. And there, in the third row, In a dress the color of deep green that Nadia had helped her choose, sat Ifua Mensah. Ifua, who had shown up with a borrowed truck and a cooler of food, who had brought a second-hand lamp because dark apartments make sad people sadder, who had sat on the floor of an empty apartment eating rice and called it a new chapter, who had never once made her kindness a performance, never needed Nadia to notice it, or thank her for it, or owe her anything in return, who had given and given from the little she had because that is simply the kind of person she was. At the reception, Nadia found her at the corner of the room and hugged her for a long time without saying anything. Ifua patted her back. "You did it," Ifua said. "We did it," Nadia said. Ifua pulled back and looked at her. "No, you did it. I just showed up." "That's everything," Nadia said. "Showing up is everything." On the flight back to Atlanta, Nadia and Kofi flew business class. His family insisted, and somewhere over the Atlantic, Kofi fell asleep with his head tilted toward the window. Nadia looked at him, at his hands resting open on the armrest, at the quiet steadiness of him, present and unhurried and real. She thought about her mother's market at 5 in the morning, the resold school shoes, the Sunday night braids, love in its small, practical, unglamorous forms. She thought about a second-hand lamp in a dark apartment. She thought about a woman who said showing up is everything, and then had spent 5 years proving it. Nadia Osei Kufur now, closed her eyes somewhere over the ocean, and slept better than she had in years. Because the most important things, she had learned, do not announce themselves. They show up quietly, do the work, and are still there in the morning. And if you are paying attention, if you have learned to watch the hands and not just hear the words, you will recognize them for what they are. Not luck, not rescue, just love, doing what love actually does. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Contemporary African Folktales and tell us in the comments, have you ever had an Ifua in your life? Someone who showed up when it mattered, without making it about themselves. This is their story too.